Welcome to Mindful Moments. Nourish your mind on the go. This audio uses AI narration to present our original book analysis. Today we're diving deep into Harvest of Empire, A History of Latinos in America by Juan Gonzalez. It flips the script on how we think about Latinos in the U.S., not just recent immigration, but centuries of history between Latin America and the U.S.
It really unveils those roots, a complex tapestry woven from colonial legacies, U.S. expansion, and waves of migration, each with its own story.
Okay, so back to the colonial era. Gonzalez compares English and Spanish settlers.
Yeah.
And the differences are striking.
Absolutely. The Spanish crown. Driven by a thirst for gold and silver, they established a vast empire through ventures focused on resource extraction. Their system of large land grants created a powerful elite dependent on exploiting native labor.
Versus the English colonies.
They had their own issues, of course, but they tended towards smaller land holdings, often worked by settlers themselves or indentured servants. This fostered a more fluid social order, with some opportunities for upward mobility, although limited.
And these differing approaches had a huge impact on how race and identity played out.
Precisely. In the Spanish colonies, racial mixing was common, leading to a complex caste system with a spectrum of whiteness, contrasting sharply with the English colonies' rigid one-drop rule, strictly divided along black and white lines. This difference is crucial. It lays the groundwork for how racial dynamics unfolded as the U.S. expanded and absorbed these Spanish-speaking territories.
So these distinct colonial legacies set the stage for what Gonzalez argues was the U.S. becoming an empire, with all its complexities. He breaks this expansion into three phases: the Southeast, the Southwest, and finally, Central America and the Caribbean.
And with each phase, we see a new wave of Latinos incorporated into the U.S., often involuntarily. For instance, with the annexation of Florida, Tejanos, Mexicans living in that territory, suddenly found themselves U.S. citizens, facing discrimination and land loss.
And later, the U.S.-Mexican War brought a huge chunk of the Southwest under U.S. control, including California, further shaping the landscape of the Latino experience.
Right.
So it's not just about land grabs, it's about how economics fueled this expansion. Gonzalez points to U.S. corporations like the United Fruit Company in Central America, seeking resources and cheap labor.
Yeah, they had a huge impact on those regions, influencing migration patterns, ultimately contributing to the rise of a Latino working class in the U.S.
The history of Latinos in America is inseparable from the history of U.S. economic and political power.
A key insight.
So we've got this backdrop of colonialism, expansion, and economic influence. Now let's look at how this impacted different Latino groups, because Gonzalez emphasizes their experiences are far from monolithic. Let's start with Puerto Ricans. Their journey is unique. They become U.S. citizens, but with this complicated, almost in-between status.
Exactly. Puerto Rico remains a U.S. territory, with limited self-governance. This ambiguity shapes their experience on the mainland, their migration driven by economic opportunities, political events, and even natural disasters like Hurricane Maria leads them to face familiar challenges: discrimination, language barriers, and a struggle for economic and political recognition.
It raises questions about identity, too. What does it mean to be Puerto Rican in the U.S.? How do you balance your heritage with the pressures to assimilate? These questions resonate across various Latino groups.
Absolutely. And speaking of identity, the Cuban experience adds another layer to this story. Their arrival is largely shaped by the Cuban Revolution, with the first wave of exiles, primarily from the upper class. Arriving with resources and a strong anti-Castro sentiment, they established a vibrant community in Miami, wielding considerable political and economic clout.
But their experience is distinct from other Latino groups. The Cold War context and U.S. government support for Cuban exiles gave them a unique position.
You're right. It highlights that even within a single national origin group, you have a spectrum of political views, socioeconomic backgrounds, and experiences.
Okay, so we've got Puerto Ricans and Cubans. Now, what about Dominicans? Their story often gets overlooked, but is a crucial part of this broader narrative. Their journey is fueled by political and economic turmoil, seeking better opportunities. They built communities in the Northeast, particularly New York City.
And their experience is marked by a sometimes tense relationship with Puerto Ricans, as they compete for jobs and resources in the same urban spaces. It reminds us that the Latino experience isn't solely about interactions with the dominant Anglo society, but also between different Latino groups.
Right. And lastly, we have Central Americans. Their arrival in large numbers is more recent, largely driven by the wars and political upheavals that ravaged the region in the 1980s. Their journey is often marked by violence, displacement, and the struggle to gain asylum in the U.S.
And just like other Latino groups, they've faced discrimination. language barriers,
Yeah.
and a complex process of acculturation. They established communities in cities like Los Angeles, Houston, and Washington, D.C., adding to the ever-evolving tapestry of Latino America.
So we've laid out this historical backdrop and explored the diverse experiences of several Latino groups. All these threads woven together really highlight what Gonzalez calls the harvest of empire. Now the question is, what are the lasting impacts of this history, and where do we go from here?
That's precisely what we'll delve into in the next part of our deep dive. We'll explore the socioeconomic challenges Latinos have faced, their fight for political power, their vibrant cultural contributions, and what the future holds for this dynamic and influential segment of American society. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Juan Gonzalez's Harvest of Empire. We've explored the historical roots of the Latino presence in America, but now let's shift gears and examine the challenges this diverse community has faced and continues to face.
Yeah, it's clear from the book that the journey for Latinos in the U.S. hasn't been easy. Gonzalez doesn't shy away from depicting the socioeconomic disparities, discrimination, and limited access to opportunities they've encountered.
One of the most striking and recurring themes in the book is the exploitation of Latino labor, particularly in industries like agriculture and manufacturing. Think about the Bracero program, which brought millions of Mexican workers to the U.S. during World War II and its aftermath.
Right, to address labor shortages.
Yes, but it also created a system ripe for exploitation, with workers often subjected to harsh conditions and low wages. And this pattern of exploiting cheap, often undocumented, Latino labor goes beyond the Bracero program. Gonzalez shows how this practice was widespread across various sectors, with U.S. corporations reaping the benefits.
Right, and it's important to understand how U.S. policies often facilitated, even encouraged, this exploitation. For instance, repeated U.S. interventions in Central America, often driven by Cold War politics, destabilized those countries, creating conditions that forced people to migrate north in search of work.
So almost like a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
Political and economic turmoil fueled by U.S. foreign policy leads to migration, which then feeds a system of cheap labor within the U.S.
And it has had a direct impact on the socioeconomic challenges faced by many Latinos in the U.S. Gonzalez points to the persistent wage gap, high poverty rates, and limited access to health care and education as just some of the consequences.
He also digs into the role of discrimination, both individual and institutional. The landmark Hernandez v. Texas case comes to mind. It exposed how Mexican Americans were systematically excluded from juries.
Oh yeah, highlighting how deeply ingrained discrimination was within the legal system itself.
So a turning point.
Absolutely. It forced the courts to recognize that discrimination went beyond just black and white, encompassing ethnicity and national origin as well. It opened the door to challenge discriminatory practices in other areas like education and housing.
So even with these legal victories, the struggle for economic and social equality for Latinos remained a steep uphill battle. Gonzalez even argues that free trade agreements like NAFTA, while presented as boosting economic growth, often backfired, leading to job displacement and further hardship for many Latino communities.
That's a crucial point. While intended to benefit the economies of all participating countries, these policies often ended up exacerbating existing inequalities and further marginalizing specific communities.
So we see this complex interplay of hardship and resilience in the Latino experience. But amidst these struggles, Gonzalez also traces the emergence of Latino political power. He talks about early civil rights struggles, the fight for labor rights, and the formation of influential organizations like LULAC, the League of United Latin American Citizens.
It's fascinating to see how Latinos, initially largely invisible in the political arena, gradually become a force to be reckoned with. This rise of political consciousness is deeply intertwined with the socioeconomic challenges we've been discussing.
Yeah, it makes sense. As Latinos face systemic obstacles, they realized that political power was essential to fight for their rights and improve their circumstances.
Precisely. And they achieved significant victories, not just through legal battles, but also through grassroots organizing, voter registration drives, and strategic alliances with other groups.
Gonzalez highlights the growing Latino electorate and its impact on U.S. politics. He even cites examples of successful Latino political figures, like Henry Cisneros, the first Hispanic mayor of San Antonio, and Bill Richardson, the first Latino to make a serious run for the Democratic presidential nomination.
It signifies a shift in the political landscape. Latinos are increasingly recognized as a crucial voting bloc. With their voices and concerns becoming part of the national political dialogue, their political power is only expected to grow.
So we've covered the challenges, the resilience, and the growing political clout. But Gonzalez doesn't just focus on the struggles. He also celebrates the rich cultural contributions Latinos have made to American society.
Absolutely.
And these contributions are everywhere, from music and dance to foods and literature.
Think about the vibrant rhythms of salsa music, the growing popularity of Latin American cuisine, or the literary works of acclaimed Latino authors like Junot Díaz and Sandra Cisneros. Latino culture has become interwoven with the fabric of American life.
And one of the more controversial aspects of this cultural influence has been the persistence of the Spanish language. Gonzalez debunks the myth that speaking Spanish is a threat to American unity, arguing that bilingualism is an asset, not a liability.
It's an important point. Fears of language diversity have been a recurring theme throughout U.S. history, and they often reflect deeper anxieties about cultural change and shifting demographics.
Gonzalez sees the persistence of Spanish as a testament to the strength and resilience of Latino culture, its enduring connection to its roots. And as the Latino population continues to grow, this cultural influence will only become more pronounced, further enriching the mosaic of American life.
Indeed. Now, having examined the challenges, the triumphs, and the rich cultural tapestry, the big question that remains is, what does the future hold for Latinos in America?
That's a great question, and it's one we'll grapple with in the final part of our deep dive. We'll explore the evolving nature of Latino identity, the potential impact of demographic shifts, and the key factors shaping the future of this dynamic and increasingly influential community. Stay with us. Welcome back to Mindful Moments. Nourish your mind on the go. We're wrapping up our deep dive into Harvest of Empire, and now it's time to look ahead. Consider what the future holds for Latinos in America.
The future is always uncertain, but understanding the historical forces that shape the Latino experience, we can gain valuable insights into the possibilities that lie ahead.
Gonzalez makes it clear that Latino identity is not static. It's constantly evolving, shaped by things like intermarriage, generational differences, and the ever-changing dynamics of American society.
He challenges that old idea of a melting pot, where everyone assimilates into a homogeneous American culture.
Right.
Instead, he sees Latinos forging a more complex path, one where they retain elements of their heritage, while also adapting to and shaping their new environment.
It's more like a mosaic, where individual pieces retain their unique character, but together they create a larger, more intricate work of art.
And this concept of a mosaic is particularly relevant. Given the dramatic demographic shifts happening in the U.S., Latinos are now the largest minority group, and their numbers are projected to continue growing.
This has huge implications. Politically, it means the Latino vote will become even more crucial in elections.
Right.
Economically, it means the success of Latinos is increasingly tied to the overall health of the U.S. economy.
Gonzalez also points to the potential for increased Latino influence in areas like culture, media, and even foreign policy as their numbers grow and their voices become louder. Their impact on American society will only become more significant.
But he doesn't sugarcoat things. He acknowledges that there are still serious challenges ahead, particularly the persistence of socioeconomic disparities, discrimination, and the ever-present threat of anti-immigrant sentiment.
One of the key takeaways from Harvest of Empire is that the struggle for Latino equality is far from over. It requires continued activism, political engagement, and a commitment to building bridges across communities.
And I think that's what makes this book so compelling. It's both a call to action and a source of hope. It reminds us that Latinos have a rich history of resilience, a vibrant and dynamic culture, and a growing power to shape their own destiny.
Harvest of Empire offers a profound and insightful perspective on a crucial chapter in American history, one that's often overlooked or misunderstood. It challenges us to think critically about the forces that have shaped the Latino experience and to envision a future where their contributions are fully recognized and valued.
So if you're looking to gain a deeper understanding of the complexities of Latino identity, the historical forces that shape their presence in America, and the potential they hold to shape the future of our nation, I highly recommend checking out Harvest of Empire. It's a must-read for anyone who wants to engage with the ever-evolving story of Latino America. You can purchase Harvest of Empire using the link in the show notes. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to Mindful Moments. Nourish your mind on the go for more thought-provoking book analyses like this one. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. And until next time, keep those minds nourished.